Back in EA Sports College Football 27. I guess I can't say back since it's the first time we're recording in EA Sports. But we are back with a new, I don't know how to say it. We're going to try to do a lot of games, but not every single game. Tried to do that the past couple games, and I get through like week 5, and that's about all I can do because there's just so many damn games. We're going to have a national game of the week. We're going to have a conference game of the week for every conference. We're going to have a small school highlight game of the week, and we'll probably have the rivalry games. Every rivalry game will be included. And then we'll do some bonus games, games that I just have interest in personally, but we'll try to skip some of the lower conference teams or any team against an FCS school. Those generally aren't worth watching too much, so we'll probably not do those, but we'll do a bunch of other games. But we are here in the preseason. My team is Nebraska. We're going to let it be computer versus computer, though. Taking a quick look at the league settings. I've got 12-minute quarters. I've got it on Heisman. Left most of this the same. My sliders for gameplay. I've adjusted the quarterback accuracy down quite a bit in this game. The quarterbacks can be pretty damn good. The wide receiver catching's down, interceptions are down, and I've bumped the field goal accuracy down a little bit, but injuries down just slightly. False starts up slightly, so nothing too crazy, but I just don't want quarterbacks going 19 of 20 every game. We'll see how these go. I've already kind of set the recruiting board and everything. I'm going to try to run that for Nebraska. That'll probably be a disaster, but this is you can see All-American Ohio State quarterback Julian Sayin opens the year as a preseason first-team All-American. That's one of the top stories. Also, a preseason All-American is Kawan Lacey. Ole Miss running back Kawan Lacey opens the year as a preseason first-team All-American. Bo Jackson from Ohio State, running back, obviously has been named a preseason first-team All-American. And, of course, Ohio State wide receiver Jeremiah Smith has been named a preseason first-team All-American. Those are some of the top stories. I'm going to probably upgrade my coach skills. That'll probably be cheating a little bit, but I did pre-order the game, so I've got to use those points. Let's take a look at the preseason top 25. I guess we could have looked at it right there. In the media poll, Ohio State is number 1 with 53 first-place votes. Oregon is number 2 with 23 first-place votes. Notre Dame coming in at number 3. Georgia and Indiana rounding out the top 5. Miami's at 6. Then Texas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, LSU. Quite a run of SEC schools there from 7 to 11. And we've got BYU, Alabama, another SEC school, Michigan, another Big Ten school, as is USC at 15. And we've got Texas Tech, Penn State, Iowa, Utah, Tennessee, Houston, SMU, Washington, Louisville, and Florida round out the top 25. Taking a look at others receiving votes, we've got Missouri at 91 votes, TCU at 85, South Carolina at 77, Virginia at 72, Auburn at 62, Clemson at 52, Arizona at 49, Oklahoma State at 48, Tulane at 23. From what I remember, Oklahoma State had a terrible year last year, so it's kind of crushing to see Oklahoma State get some votes while my Nebraska Cornhuskers don't, but we had a horrible end to last year, so I can't really blame the voters there. In the coaches poll, Ohio State also number 1 in this poll with 39 first-place votes. Oregon at the same number 2 spot here with 10 first-place votes. Then Georgia, Miami, and Notre Dame round out the top 5. Texas is at number 6, followed by Texas A&M, Indiana, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas Tech, Michigan, Penn State, LSU, BYU, USC, Iowa, Washington, SMU, Utah, Louisville, Tennessee, Houston, and South Carolina comes in at number 25. Others receiving votes is Clemson with 91, Virginia with 85, Florida with 77, Oklahoma State with 72, Missouri at 62, Duke at 52, Auburn at 49, and TCU at 48. So Oklahoma State must have kind of bounced back in the second half of the year and finished strong or something. Last I saw, they were getting crushed by pretty much everybody, but I didn't really pay attention to them in the second half of the year. Conference standings, I wish. Now, this looks like it's actually potentially predicted order of finish, although Oregon at 4 makes me question it. But if this is accurate, they're predicting Ohio State to win the Big Ten, Indiana to come in second, Nebraska at 7. I'd be happy with that, except for we're behind Iowa. Let's see if the other conferences kind of look like they might be in order of finish. I would see it's not. They've got Illinois at the top now, so these are not predicted order of finish, unfortunately. It doesn't look like you can sort by anything that would have the predicted order of finish, so it's not really worth looking at that. Heisman watch, though. We've got the Heisman Award is the most prestigious award in all of college football. Jeremiah Smith at number 1 from Ohio State. Dante Moore from Oregon at number 2. Malachi Toney from Miami at number 3. And Julian Sayin from Ohio State at number 4. It looks like they only do a top 4 now, but these are pretty accurate in terms of who will be the focus going into the preseason in real life for Heisman favorites. Preseason All-Americans, we do like to go through these, both the All-Americans and the All-Conference, so this takes a while, so bear with me, fast forward if you don't want to see this. But preseason first-team All-Americans nationally, we got at quarterback Julian Sayin, Jr. from Ohio State. At running back, we've got Kawan Lacey, a junior from Ole Miss. At the other running back spot, we got Bo Jackson, a sophomore from Ohio State. Wide receiver, junior Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. At another wide receiver spot, we got sophomore Malachi Toney from Miami. At the last wide receiver spot, we've got junior Ryan Coleman Williams from Alabama. At tight end, we've got junior Jamari Johnson from Oregon. At left tackle, we've got senior Carter Smith from Indiana. At left guard, we've got senior Luke Montgomery from Ohio State. At center, we've got senior Iapani Lalulu from Oregon. At right guard, we've got senior Austin Siereveld from Ohio State. At right tackle, we've got sophomore Michael Carroll from Alabama. At defensive end, we've got senior Kenyatta Jackson Jr. from Ohio State. At the other defensive end spot, we've got senior Matayo Ugalele from Oregon. At defensive tackle, we've got senior Amari Washington from Oregon. Oregon with a bunch of guys there, as does Ohio State have a bunch of guys here. At the other defensive tackle spot, we've got junior David Stone from Oklahoma. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Keaton Thomas from Ole Miss. At Mike linebacker, we've got senior Drake Bowen from Notre Dame. At the will linebacker spot, we got junior Rolija Hardy, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, from Indiana. At cornerback, we got junior Leonard Moore from Notre Dame. At the other cornerback spot, we got sophomore Ellis Robinson IV from Georgia. At free safety, we've got junior KJ Bolden from Georgia. At strong safety, we've got senior Bray Hubbard from Alabama. At kicker, we've got senior Tate Sandell from Oklahoma. And at punter, we've got senior Brady Bradshaw from Texas A&M. Looking at the preseason second-team All-Americans, at quarterback, we've got junior Dante Moore from Oregon. At running back, we've got senior Mark Fletcher Jr. from Miami. The other running back is junior Nate Frazier from Georgia. First wide receiver spot is senior Brandon Innes from Ohio State. And second wide receiver spot is senior Cooper Barkate from Miami. Third wide receiver spot is junior Mario Craver from Texas A&M. At tight end, we've got junior Tradez Green from LSU. At left tackle, we've got senior Ernest Green III from Georgia. At left guard, we've got senior Drew Evans from Indiana. At center, we've got junior Cade Piper from Iowa. At right guard, we've got junior Brandon Baker from Texas. At right tackle, we've got junior Andrew Sprague from Michigan. Defensive end, we've got Tatum Tuioti. He's a senior from Oregon. The other defensive end is junior Yanze Pierre from Alabama. A defensive tackle, we've got senior James Smith from Ohio State. The other defensive tackle spot is also a senior from Ohio State, John Walker. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Caleb Bacon from Penn State. At Mike linebacker, we've got junior Kingston Viliamu Asa from Notre Dame. Let's see how many of these names I'm going to mispronounce. At will linebacker, we've got junior Chris Cole from Georgia. Cornerback, we've got junior Xavier Brown from Alabama. Other cornerback spot, we've got sophomore Devin Sanchez from Ohio State. At free safety, we've got senior Keon Sabb from Alabama. At strong safety, we've got junior Coy Parrish from Oregon. I remember him. He transferred from Minnesota. At kicker, we've got senior Lucas Carniero from Ole Miss. And at punter, we got senior Grayson Miller from Oklahoma. And now we will move on to the first team All ACC preseason. At quarterback, we've got junior Darian Mensah from Miami, transferred in from Duke. At running back, we've got senior Mark Fletcher Jr. from Miami. At the other running back spot, we got junior Charmar Brown from Miami, originally from Omaha, Nebraska. He almost transferred into Nebraska. At wide receiver, we got sophomore Malachi Toney from Miami. Other wide receiver spot, we got senior Cooper Barkate from Miami. Last wide receiver spot, we got senior Deuce Robinson from Florida State. I remember him transferring in from USC. At tight end, we've got junior Elijah Lofton from Miami. At left tackle, we've got senior Xavier Chaplin from Florida State. At left guard, we've got junior Samson Okunlola from Miami. At center, we got senior Ryan Rodriguez from Miami. At right guard, we've got senior Addison Nichols from SMU. At right tackle, we've got senior Matthew McCoy from Miami. Defensive end, we got junior Marquise Lightfoot from Miami. At the other defensive end spot, we've got senior Will Helt from Clemson. At defensive tackle, we've got senior Ahmad Moten Sr. from Miami. At defensive tackle, the other defensive tackle spot, we've got junior Justin Scott from Miami. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Antonio Watts from Louisville. At Mike linebacker, we've got junior Sammy Brown from Clemson. At Will linebacker, we've got senior Mohamed Toure from Miami. At cornerback, we've got junior Ethan O'Connor from Miami. At the other cornerback spot, we got junior Xavier Lucas from Miami. At free safety, we've got junior Zechariah Poyser from Miami. At strong safety, we've got sophomore Bryce Fitzgerald from Miami. At kicker, we've got senior Aiden Burr from Georgia Tech. And at punter, we've got senior Dylan Joyce from Miami. Miami dominating the preseason first team All ACC. Let's move to the preseason second team All ACC. At quarterback, we've got senior Kevin Jennings from SMU. At running back, we've got sophomore Gerard Pringle Jr. from Miami. At running back, we've got junior Isaac Brown from Louisville. Miami had 3 of the top 4 running backs in this for the ACC. At wide receiver, we've got junior TJ Moore from Clemson. At wide receiver, we've got junior Vandrevius Jacobs from Miami. At the last wide receiver spot, we've got junior Bryant Wesco Jr. from Clemson. At tight end, we've got senior Jeremiah Hasley from Duke. At left tackle, we've got freshman Jackson Cantwell from Miami. He almost went to Nebraska. Well, Nebraska was one of his top 5 anyway. At left guard, we've got senior Noah Josie from Virginia. At center, we've got junior Joshua Bates from SMU. At right guard, we've got sophomore Max Buchanan from Miami. At right tackle, we've got senior PJ Williams from SMU. At defensive end, we got junior Armando Blount from Miami. At the other defensive end spot, we got senior Damon Wilson II from Miami. At defensive tackle, we've got junior Vic Burley from Clemson. At the other defensive tackle spot, we've got junior Keona Davis from Miami. He transferred from Nebraska. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Harvey Dyson from NC State. At Mike linebacker, we've got senior Cam Robinson from Virginia. At Will linebacker, we've got senior EJ Lightsey from Georgia Tech. At cornerback, we've got junior OJ Frederic Jr. from Miami. At the other cornerback spot, we've got junior Ashton Hampton from Clemson. At free safety, we've got freshman J.J. Dunnigan from Miami. At strong safety, we've got junior Corey Myrick from Clemson. At kicker, we've got junior Nolan Hauser from Clemson. And at punter, we've got junior Ian Lawrence from Georgia Tech. Moving on to the preseason first team All-American Conference. At quarterback, we've got senior Cale Helms from Army. At running back, we've got sophomore Jamari McClure from Tulane. At the other running back spot, we've got junior Jaheim White from North Texas. At wide receiver, we've got senior Luke Hutchison from Navy. At the second wide receiver spot, we've got senior Anthony Brown Stevens from Tulane. At the final wide receiver spot, we've got senior Easton Messer from Florida Atlantic. At tight end, we've got senior Hunter Tipton from Memphis. At left tackle, we've got senior Henry Appleton from Army. At left guard, we've got senior Thomas Schrader from USF, South Florida. At center, we've got senior Brady Small from Army. At right guard, we've got senior Hokie Smith II from Navy. At right tackle, we've got senior Teddy Williams from Army. At defensive end, we've got junior Kyron Duhan from Tulsa. At the other defensive end spot, we've got senior Jamon Tapp from Memphis. At defensive tackle, we got senior Cody Harris Miller from Army. At the other defensive tackle spot, we've got senior Griffin Willis from Navy. At the Sam linebacker, we've got junior Cole Seawright from Army. At the Mike linebacker, we've got senior Coleman Cawley from Navy. At the Will linebacker spot, we got senior Michael Montgomery from Memphis. At cornerback, we got senior Jaden Mays from Army. At the other cornerback spot, we've got junior Elijah Green from Tulsa. At free safety, we've got senior Stephen Nanadozi from Army. I'm sure I pronounced that correctly. At strong safety, we've got senior Giuseppe Sessi from Navy. At kicker, we've got junior Jackson Courville from Tulane. And at punter, we've got senior James Wagonseller from Army. Now, preseason second team All-American Conference. At quarterback, we've got senior Braxton Woodson from Navy. At running back, we've got sophomore Will Henderson III from Texas San Antonio. At the other running back spot, we've got senior Johnny Daniels from Tulane. At the first wide receiver spot, we've got junior Ray Joseph from East Carolina. At the second wide receiver spot, we've got senior Kenny Odom from South Florida. At the last wide receiver spot, we got senior Landon Sides from East Carolina. At tight end, we've got senior Peter Clark from Temple. At left tackle, we've got junior Riley McGahee from Memphis. At left guard, we've got junior Jake Polito from Navy. At center, we've got senior Cam Nichols from Navy. At right guard, we got senior Caleb Cook from South Florida. At right tackle, we've got senior Nito Yumiozulu from North Texas. At defensive end, we got senior Udoka Eziani from North Texas. At the other defensive end spot, we've got junior Jack Bowsam from Army. At defensive tackle, we got senior Ed Smith IV from Tulane. At the other defensive tackle spot, we've got senior Derek Shepard Jr. from Tulane. At the Sam linebacker spot, we got junior CJ Martin from Army. At the Mike linebacker spot, we got senior Jesus Machado Jr. from Rice, or Jesus Machado Jr. from Rice. At the Will linebacker spot, we got senior Chris Rogers from Tulane. At cornerback, we've got junior Macho Stevenson, great name, from Tulane. At the other cornerback spot, we've got senior Anthony Richard Jr. from Memphis. At free safety, we've got senior Amir Foster from Memphis. At strong safety, we've got junior Jack Chinchu from Tulane, something like that. At kicker, we've got junior Dawson Jones from Army. And at punter, we've got junior Cale Hogan from Texas San Antonio. Moving on to the Big 12. Preseason first team, all Big 12. Quarterback, we got Bear Bachmeier from BYU. He's a sophomore. At running back, we've got senior LJ Martin from BYU. At the other running back spot, we've got sophomore Caleb Hawkins from Oklahoma State. At the first wide receiver spot, we got senior Danny Scudero from Colorado. Second wide receiver spot goes to senior Amare Thomas from Houston. Third wide receiver spot goes to junior Wyatt Young from Oklahoma State. At tight end, we've got senior Terrence Carter Jr. from Texas Tech. At left tackle, we've got senior Howard Sampson from Texas Tech. Left guard, we got senior Shadre Hurst from Houston. At center, we've got senior Bruce Mitchell from BYU. At right guard, we've got senior Kyle Svarchiak, something like that, from BYU. At right tackle, we've got junior Sia from BYU, or J.R. Sia, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. At defensive end, we've got senior Trey White from Texas Tech. At the other defensive end spot, we've got senior Adam Trick, also from Texas Tech. Defensive tackle, we've got senior Keanu Tanuvasa from BYU. The other defensive tackle spot is senior A.J. Holmes Jr. from Texas Tech. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Isaiah Glasker from BYU. At Mike linebacker, we got senior Ben Roberts from Texas Tech. At Will linebacker, we got senior Austin Romaine from Texas Tech. At cornerback, we've got senior Evan Johnson from BYU. At the other cornerback spot, we've got senior Bryce Pollock from Texas Tech. At free safety, we've got senior Raider Damuni from BYU. At strong safety, we've got junior Falatau Satuala. Let's say I pronounce that right, from BYU. At kicker, we've got senior Stone Harrington from Texas Tech. And at punter, we've got senior Eddie Jensen from Texas Tech. Preseason second team, all Big 12. At quarterback, we got Devin Dampier from Utah. He's a senior. At running back, we got junior Cameron Dickey from Texas Tech. At the other running back spot, we've got junior Wayshawn Parker from Utah. At wide receiver, we got senior Coy Eakin from Texas Tech. At another wide receiver spot, we got senior Kenny Johnson from Texas Tech. And at the last wide receiver spot, we got senior Trent Walker from Houston. At tight end, we've got junior Walker Lyons from BYU. At left tackle, we've got senior Andrew Gentry from BYU. At left guard, we've got junior Evan Tengesdal from Cincinnati. At center, we've got senior Sheridan Wilson from Texas Tech. At right guard, we've got senior Noah McKinney from TCU. At right tackle, we've got sophomore Jacob Ponton from Texas Tech. At defensive end, we've got senior Bodie Schoonover from BYU. At the other defensive end spot, we've got senior Brandon Mack II from Houston. At defensive tackle, we've got senior Mateen Ibiragba, we'll say, from Texas Tech. At the other defensive tackle spot, we've got senior Justin Kirkland from BYU. At Sam linebacker, we've got junior John Curry from Texas Tech. At Mike linebacker, we've got junior Siale Acera from BYU. At Will linebacker, we've got senior Cade Uluave from BYU. At cornerback, we've got junior Therian Alexander III from BYU. At the other cornerback spot, we've got junior Boo Carter from Colorado. Free safety, we got senior Brendan Jordan from Texas Tech. Strong safety, we've got senior Jamel Johnson from TCU. At kicker, we've got junior Kyle Conrarty from Iowa State. And at punter, we've got senior Palmer Williams from Baylor. Now we're moving on to the Big Ten. Preseason first team All Big Ten. At quarterback, we've got junior Julian Sayin from Ohio State. At running back, we've got sophomore Bo Jackson from Ohio State. At the other running back spot, we got junior Jordan Marshall from Michigan. At wide receiver 1, we got junior Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. At wide receiver 2, we've got senior Brandon Innes from Ohio State. At wide receiver 3, we've got senior Shaz Preston from Indiana. At tight end, we've got junior Jamari Johnson from Oregon. At left tackle, we've got senior Carter Smith from Indiana. At left guard, we've got senior Luke Montgomery from Ohio State. At center, we've got senior Iapani Lalulu from Oregon. At right guard, we've got senior Austin Siraveld from Ohio State. At right tackle, we've got junior Andrew Sprague from Michigan. At defensive end, we've got senior Kenyatta Jackson Jr. from Ohio State. At the other defensive end spot, we've got senior Matayo Ugalele from Oregon. At defensive tackle, we've got senior Amari Washington from Oregon. The other defensive tackle spot is senior James Smith from Ohio State. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Caleb Bacon from Penn State. At Mike linebacker, senior Isaiah Jones from Indiana. At Will linebacker, we've got junior Rolija Hardy. Rolija or Rolija, I don't know how you say that one. He's from Indiana. At cornerback, we've got senior Jamari Sharp from Indiana. At the other cornerback spot, we've got senior Jair Hill from Michigan. At free safety, we've got senior Amari Farrell from Indiana, or Farrell, I can't remember how you pronounce his name. At strong safety, we've got junior Coy Parich from Oregon. At kicker, we've got junior Nico Radicic from Indiana. And at punter, we've got junior Lane Dempsey from Nebraska. I think this is a substitute for our Australian punter, whose name is escaping me, but I don't think he can be in the game because he's an international player, but I'm not sure about that. But he's got a different name, so I think that's taking the place of our real punter. Preseason second team All Big Ten. At quarterback, we got Dante Moore from Oregon. He's a junior. At running back, we've got junior Turbo Richard from Indiana. At the other running back spot, we've got sophomore Jordan Davison from Oregon. At wide receiver 1, we've got sophomore Andrew Marsh from Michigan. Wide receiver 2, we've got junior Charlie Becker from Indiana. At wide receiver 3, we've got senior Devin McEwen from Ohio State. At tight end, we've got senior Benjamin Brahmer from Penn State. He transferred along with his coach from Iowa State. At left tackle, we've got junior Trevor Lauk from Iowa. At left guard, we've got senior Drew Evans from Indiana. At center, we've got junior Cade Piper from Iowa. At right guard, we got senior Nathan Ifobi from Michigan. At right tackle, we got senior Philip Daniels from Ohio State. Defensive end, we got senior Tatum Tuioti from Oregon. At the other defensive end spot, we got junior John Henry Daly from Michigan. At defensive tackle, we've got senior John Walker from Ohio State. At the other defensive tackle spot, senior Bear Alexander from Oregon. At the Sam linebacker, we've got senior Caden Turner from Indiana. At Mike linebacker, we've got junior Peyton Pierce from Ohio State. At the Will linebacker, we've got junior Owen Chambliss from Nebraska. At cornerback, we've got senior Jermaine Matthews Jr. from Ohio State. Other cornerback spot is sophomore Devin Sanchez from Ohio State. Free safety, we got senior Terry Moore from Ohio State. Strong safety, junior Jalen McClain, surprise, from Ohio State. And at kicker, we've got junior Blaine Bell from Michigan. And at punter, we've got senior Joe McGuire from Ohio State. I'll get to move on to Conference USA. Preseason first team all Conference USA. At quarterback, we've got junior Nick Minacucci from Delaware. At running back, we've got senior Jonathan Silver, or Jonathan Silver, I'm not sure which, from Delaware. The other running back spot is junior Anthony Carey from Florida International. At wide receiver 1, we've got senior KD Hutchinson from Western Kentucky. At wide receiver 2, we've got junior DeAndre Johnson from Jacksonville State. At wide receiver 3, we've got sophomore Sean Wilson from Delaware. At tight end, we've got senior LaKelsey Johnson Jr. from Liberty. At left tackle, we've got senior Jadarius Lee from Kennesaw State. At left guard, we've got junior Joep Engbers from Liberty. At center, we've got senior Mateo Guevara, probably, from Kennesaw State. At right guard, we've got senior Rhett Larson from Western Kentucky. At right tackle, we've got senior Jeremiah Orr from Jacksonville State. Defensive end, we got senior Noah Matthews from Delaware. Other defensive end spot, we got senior Kenton Simmons from Florida International. Defensive tackle, we've got junior Jawan Campbell from Jacksonville State. Other defensive tackle spot, we got senior Mike Jarvis from Liberty. Sam linebacker, we've got senior Blake Matthews from Delaware. Mike linebacker, we've got senior Barron Hobson from Kennesaw State. Will linebacker, we've got senior Walker Osteen from Jacksonville State. Cornerback, senior Traquan Fegans from Jacksonville State. Other cornerback spot is senior Jai Ivayan Celestine, I'm sure I pronounced that correctly, from Florida International. Free safety, we've got junior KT Say from Delaware. At strong safety, we've got senior Jalen Lewis from Western Kentucky. At kicker, we've got junior Garrison Ripa from Jacksonville State. And at punter, we've got sophomore Sam Payton from Florida International. Preseason second team all Conference USA. At quarterback, we've got sophomore Caden Creel from Jacksonville State. At running back, we got freshman Jalen Coleman from Liberty. Other running back spot, we got sophomore Cam Davis, also from Liberty. Wide receiver 1, we got senior Jamarie Robinson from Missouri State. Wide receiver 2, we've got senior Makai Jackson from Liberty. Wide receiver 3, we've got senior Jamari Person from Liberty. Tight end, we've got senior Caleb Bryan from Liberty. Liberty dominating the second team here. At left tackle, we've got junior DJ Geth from Liberty. At left guard, we've got junior Antonio Tripp Jr. from Florida International. At center, we've got junior Aaron Fenimore from Liberty. At right guard, we've got junior Alex Birchmeyer from Liberty. Right tackle, we've got senior Christian Williams from Liberty. At defensive end, we've got senior Aaron Hester from Liberty. At the other defensive end spot, we've got junior Donovan Westmoreland from Kennesaw State. At defensive tackle, we've got senior Zyqui Lawton from Western Kentucky. Other defensive tackle spot is senior Curtis Perry from Jacksonville State. Sam linebacker is senior Alan Gales from Florida International. Mike linebacker is junior Gavin Mowell from Delaware. Will linebacker, we've got junior Darrell Farrar from Liberty. At cornerback 1, we got freshman Jamarian Koligbadi from Delaware. At the other cornerback spot, we got senior Jaheim Jenkins from Jacksonville State. Free safety, we've got senior Caleb Nix from Jacksonville State. At strong safety, we got junior Isaac Paul from Kennesaw State. At kicker, we've got junior Yusuf Obid from Missouri State. And at punter, we've got junior Brian Snyder from Florida International. The independents are going to be all Notre Dame. I don't think I'm going to go through these. All Notre Dame on the first team, and all Notre Dame on the second team. I think it's only Notre Dame and UConn. Oh, yep, there's a UConn player that are independent, so we don't really need to go through those. On to the MAC. Preseason first team all MAC. At quarterback, we've got junior Brock Lowry from Western Michigan. At running back, we've got senior Jalen Buckley from Western Michigan. Other running back spot is sophomore Corey Smith from Toledo. At wide receiver 1, we've got senior Langston Lewis from Central Michigan. At wide receiver 2, we've got senior Tommy McIntosh from Central Michigan. Wide receiver 3 is senior Nick Devereaux from Eastern Michigan. At tight end, we've got senior Jordan Williams from Sacramento State. Weird seeing Sacramento State in the MAC. Also weird not seeing Northern Illinois in the MAC. At left tackle, we've got senior Eric Smith from Miami of Ohio. At left guard, we've got senior Hunter Whitenack from Western Michigan. At center, we've got senior Nicholas Gallegos from Eastern Michigan. At right guard, we've got junior Matthew Neff from Central Michigan. At right tackle, we've got senior Chad Schuster from Western Michigan. Defensive end, we've got junior Andrew Zock from Toledo. Other defensive end spot, we've got junior Job from Miami of Ohio. At defensive tackle, we've got sophomore Quavion Bird from Central Michigan. The other defensive tackle spot is junior Marcus Moore from Miami of Ohio. Sam linebacker, we've got junior Derek Houston from Sacramento State. At Mike linebacker, we've got senior Michael Molnar from Ohio. At Will linebacker, we've got freshman Charlie Christopher from Ohio. Cornerback, we've got senior Joshua Franklin from Western Michigan. Other cornerback spot, junior Jion Jackson from Central Michigan. At free safety, we've got senior Miles Greer from Buffalo. Strong safety, we've got junior DJ Walker from Ohio. At kicker, we've got senior Jason Keeley from Central Michigan. And at punter, we got junior Declan Dooley is probably how you say that, from Central Michigan. Preseason second team All-MAC. At quarterback, we've got senior Noah Kim from Eastern Michigan. At running back, we've got senior Cade Yakameli from Miami of Ohio. Other running back spot is junior Duncan Brune from Ohio. At wide receiver 1, we got junior Keith Reynolds from Miami of Ohio. Wide receiver 2, we got senior Anthony Simpson from Toledo. Wide receiver 3, we got sophomore Wayne Harris from Kent State. Tight end, we've got senior Jake Newell from Toledo. At left tackle, we've got senior Stephen Gales from Toledo. At left guard, we've got junior Jacob Russell from Central Michigan. At center, we've got sophomore Chris Manu from Miami of Ohio. At right guard, we've got senior Vi Soifua from Sacramento State. At right tackle, we've got senior Evan Malcor from Miami of Ohio. At defensive end, we got senior Micah Coleman from Miami of Ohio. The other defensive end spot, we got senior Miles Bradley from Bowling Green. Defensive tackle, we got senior Nehemiah Dukes from Ohio. The other defensive tackle spot goes to junior Austin Mitchell from Ohio. At Sam linebacker, we've got sophomore Brendan Anis from Western Michigan. At Mike linebacker, we've got senior Jack Fries from Ohio. At Will linebacker, senior Blaine Myrick from Miami of Ohio. At cornerback, we got senior Michael Yarbrough from Miami of Ohio. The other cornerback spot would be junior Eli Thompson from Ohio. At free safety, we've got senior Zeron Daniel from UMass. At strong safety, we got senior Dylan Tatum from Miami of Ohio. At kicker, we've got senior Palmer Domschke from Western Michigan. And at punter, we've got junior Mark Duff from Miami of Ohio. Moving on to the Mountain West Conference preseason first team, all Mountain West, At quarterback, we've got junior Liam Zarka from Air Force. At running back, we've got senior Jaden Thomas from UNLV. The other running back spot, senior Jalen Glover from UNLV. Wide receiver 1, we've got senior Pofeli Ashlock from Hawaii. Wide receiver 2, we've got junior Taz Reddix from UNLV. Wide receiver 3, we've got senior Troy O'Meary from New Mexico. At tight end, we've got senior Kian Burnett from UNLV. At left tackle, we've got senior Nathan Elwood from Air Force. At left guard, we got junior Griffin Empey from North Dakota State. At center, we've got senior Ethan Spencer from Hawaii. At junior, we got right guard BJ Tolo from UNLV. At right tackle, we've got senior Luke Vonderhaar from Air Force. At defensive end, we got sophomore Matthew Stenbroten from North Dakota State. The other defensive end spot, we got senior Dylan La Barbera from Nevada. At defensive tackle, we've got junior Lucas Conti from UNLV. The other defensive tackle spot is junior Keenan Wilson from North Dakota State. Sam linebacker, we've got senior Isaac Hubert from Air Force. At Mike linebacker, we've got senior Jackson Eck from New Mexico. At Will linebacker, we've got senior Blake Fletcher from Air Force. At cornerback, we got senior Elijah Palmer from Hawaii. Cornerback 2, we got senior Denver Harris from UNLV. Free safety, we've got senior Xavier Smith from UTEP. At strong safety, we've got junior Roger Jones Jr. from Air Force. At kicker, we've got junior Trajan Sinatra from San Jose State. And at punter, we've got senior Trent Carrizosa from San Jose State. Preseason second team All Mountain West. At quarterback, we've got sophomore Micah Alahado from Hawaii. At running back, we've got junior DJ Scott from North Dakota State. At the other running back spot, we've got senior Cam Barfield from Hawaii. At wide receiver 1, we got senior Anthony Ivy from San Jose State. Wide receiver 2, we've got junior Audric Harris from Hawaii. Wide receiver 3, we've got senior Troy Stellato from UNLV. At tight end, we've got sophomore Reese Kessel from North Dakota State. At left tackle, we've got senior Jack Foster from Nevada. At left guard, we've got senior Alec Falk from Air Force. At center, we've got sophomore Caden Robnett from New Mexico. At right guard, we've got junior Tyler Chen from San Jose State. At right tackle, we've got senior Zach Kocknauer from Nevada. At defensive end, we've got sophomore Elias Rudolph from UNLV. At the other defensive end spot, we've got junior Lester Lysane Lagafuaina from Hawaii. I'm sure I pronounced that right. At defensive tackle, we've got junior Cohen Fuller from UNLV. Other defensive tackle spot is senior Logan Larson from North Dakota State. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Ethan Powell from San Jose State. At Mike linebacker, we've got junior Donovan Woolen from North Dakota State. At Will linebacker, junior Keith Williams from North Dakota State. At cornerback, we got senior Caleb Brown from Hawaii. The other cornerback spot is junior Corey Johnson from Air Force. At free safety, we've got senior Austin Brawley from New Mexico. At strong safety, we got senior Darius Givens from North Dakota State. At kicker, we've got junior Ramon Villela from UNLV. And at punter, we've got senior Brady Braun from UTEP. Moving on to the Pac-12. It's going to be a lot of Boise State on the first team here. For preseason first team, all Pac-12 at quarterback, we've got senior Maddox Madsen from Boise State. At running back, we've got junior Dylan Riley from Boise State. At the other running back spot, we've got sophomore Sire Gaines from Boise State. At wide receiver 1, we've got senior Tony Freeman from Washington State. Wide receiver 2, we've got senior Ben Ford from Boise State. Wide receiver 3, we've got senior Bo Sparks from Texas State. At tight end, we've got junior Matt Wagner from Boise State. At left tackle, we've got junior Ashton Tripp from Washington State. At left guard, we've got senior Johnny Lester from Washington State. At center, we've got junior Jason Steele from Boise State. At right guard, we've got senior Roger Carrion from Boise State. At right tackle, we've got senior Dalen Metoyer from Boise State. At defensive end, we've got senior Max Steg from Boise State. The other defensive end spot, we got senior Jaden Virgin Morgan from Boise State. At defensive tackle, we've got senior David Latu from Boise State. The other defensive tackle spot, we got senior Jacob Schuster from Oregon State. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Gyrese Goodman from Oregon State. At Mike linebacker, we got senior Aiden Sullivan from Oregon State. At Will linebacker, we've got junior, is that Omar Diomande from Colorado State? At cornerback, we've got junior Jericho Washington Jr. or Jericho. I'm assuming it's Jericho, the way it's spelled. He's from Boise State. The other cornerback is senior Simeon Harris from Fresno State. At free safety, we've got junior Roman Tillman from Boise State. At strong safety, we've got senior Brevin Hamblin from Utah State. At kicker, we've got senior Colton Boomer from Boise State. Great name for a kicker. And at punter, we got senior Oscar Doyle from Boise State. Preseason second team, all Pac-12. At quarterback, we got Malik Murphy, a senior from Oregon State. At running back, we've got sophomore Jules Goff from Boise State. The other running back spot, we got junior Bryson Donaldson from Fresno State. Wide receiver 1, we got senior Darius Clemens from Washington State. At wide receiver 2, we've got freshman Terrius Favors from Boise State. Wide receiver 3, we've got senior Josiah Freeman from Fresno State. At tight end, we've got Juice Vereen from Colorado State. He's a junior, if I didn't mention that. At left tackle, we've got senior Tyler Etheridge from Boise State. At left guard, we've got senior Edward Fonua from Fresno State. At center, we've got junior Jimmy Liston from Utah State. At right guard, we've got senior Tyler Volton from Oregon State. At right tackle, we've got senior Quentin Harris from Colorado State. At defensive end, we've got senior Takari Hickle from Oregon State. The other defensive end spot, we've got senior Sterling Lane II from Boise State. At defensive tackle, we've got sophomore Lopez Sanusi from Boise State. Other defensive tackle spot goes to junior Tavita Palmee from Oregon State. At Sam linebacker, we've got sophomore Gage Jones from Washington State. At Mike linebacker, we've got senior Tano Latuli from San Diego State. At Will linebacker, we've got junior Bowen Phelps from Boise State. At cornerback, we got senior Jaden Mickey from Boise State. Other cornerback spot is junior Sherrod Smith from Boise State. At free safety, we got sophomore Tabron Benny Powell from Boise State. At strong safety, senior DeLaShawn Staley from San Diego State. At kicker, we got junior Kali Nuguma from Colorado State. And at punter, we got junior Landon Reckhow from Utah State. Now moving on to the SEC. First team all conference for the SEC. At quarterback, we got senior Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss. Running back, junior Kawan Lacey from Ole Miss. Running back, junior Nate Frazier from Georgia. Wide receiver, we got junior Ryan Coleman-Williams from Alabama. At wide receiver 2, we got junior Mario Craver from Texas A&M. At wide receiver 3, we got senior Isaiah Satania III from Oklahoma. At tight end, we got junior Tradez Green from LSU. At left tackle, we've got senior Ernest Green III from Georgia. At left guard, we got senior Wendell Moe Jr. from Tennessee. At center, we've got senior Drew Bobo from Georgia. At right guard, we got junior Brandon Baker from Texas. At right tackle, we've got sophomore Michael Carroll from Alabama. Defensive end, we got senior Marion Latham from Alabama. The other defensive end spot goes to junior Yonze Pierre from Alabama. At defensive tackle, we've got junior David Stone from Oklahoma. Other defensive tackle spot is junior Will Ecoles from Ole Miss, or Ecoles. At Sam linebacker, we got senior Keaton Thomas from Ole Miss. At Mike linebacker, senior Raylan Wilson from Georgia. At Will linebacker, we've got junior Chris Cole from Georgia. Cornerback, we got sophomore Ellis Robinson IV from Georgia. Other cornerback spot is junior Xavier Brown from Alabama. Free safety, we got junior KJ Bolden from Georgia. Strong safety, senior Bray Hubbard from Alabama. Kicker, we've got senior Tate Sandell from Oklahoma. And at punter, we've got senior Brady Bradshaw from Texas A&M. Preseason second team All-SEC at quarterback, we've got junior Sam Levitt from LSU. Running back, we've got junior Ahmad Hardy from Missouri. Other running back spot is junior Deshaun Bishop from Tennessee. Wide receiver 1, we got junior Cam Coleman from Texas. Wide receiver 2, we've got junior Jackson Harris from LSU. At wide receiver 3, we've got junior Isaiah Canyon from Georgia. At tight end, we've got senior Luke Haas from Ole Miss. At left tackle, we've got junior Jordan Seaton from LSU. At left guard, we've got sophomore Cohen Eccles from Texas A&M. At center, we've got senior Braylon Moore from LSU. At right guard, we've got junior Ethan Fields from Alabama. Right tackle, we've got sophomore Juan Gaston from Georgia. At defensive end, we've got senior Devon Tompkins from Alabama. The other defensive end spot, junior Colin Simmons from Texas. Defensive tackle, we've got sophomore Elijah Griffin from Georgia. Other defensive tackle spot is senior Darnell Brewster from Alabama. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Brad Spence from Texas. Mike linebacker, we've got senior Whit Weeks from LSU. Will linebacker, we've got senior Suntarine Perkins from Ole Miss. At cornerback, we've got sophomore Dijon Lee Jr. from Alabama. The other cornerback spot is junior Eli Bowen from Oklahoma. Free safety, we got senior Keon Sabb from Alabama. Strong safety, we've got junior Jamarly Riddle from Georgia. At kicker, we've got senior Lucas Carniero from Ole Miss. And at punter, we've got senior Grayson Miller from Oklahoma. Sunbelt, I think this is our last conference. We're almost through it. First team, all Sunbelt for the preseason. At quarterback, we've got senior Carlos Del Rio Wilson from Marshall. At running back, we've got junior George Pettaway from James Madison. The other running back spot, we've got junior Devin Roche from Old Dominion. Wide receiver 1, we've got junior Braden Wisloski from James Madison. At wide receiver 2, we've got junior Chauncey Cobb from Arkansas State. Wide receiver 3, we've got senior Josh Dallas from Georgia Southern. At tight end, we've got senior Toby Payne from Marshall. At left tackle, we've got junior Hayden Christman from Louisiana Tech. Left guard, we got senior Tristian Smith from Arkansas State. At center, we've got senior Zach Greenberg from James Madison. At right guard, we've got senior Jalen Slappy from Marshall. I like that name. At right tackle, we've got senior Jordan Jones from Troy. At defensive end, we've got senior DJ Wesolak from Coastal Carolina. At the other defensive end spot, we've got senior Donnie Smith from Troy. Defensive tackle, we've got senior Latrell Bullard from Georgia Southern. The other defensive tackle spot is redshirt freshman, Michael McMullen from James Madison. At Sam linebacker, we've got senior Javay Gilmore from Marshall. At Mike linebacker, we got junior Colton Ferez from Appalachian State. At Will linebacker, we got senior Colby Fields from Louisiana Tech. Cornerback, we got sophomore Brent Gordon Jr. from Louisiana. The other cornerback spot is junior Brandon Crutchfield from Old Dominion. At free safety, we got senior Mario Easterly from Old Dominion. Strong safety, we've got junior Davon Isles from Old Dominion. At kicker, we've got senior Kloon Van Andel from Arkansas State. At punter, we've got senior Evan Crenshaw from Troy. Now for the preseason second team, all Sunbelt. At quarterback, we've got freshman Davi Belfort from James Madison. At running back, we've got sophomore Jakari Lewis from Appalachian State. The other running back spot goes to sophomore Nick Herman from James Madison. Wide receiver 1, we've got junior Shelton Sampson Jr. from Louisiana. At wide receiver 2, we've got junior Talon Shetron from Louisiana Tech. Wide receiver 3, we've got junior Christian Hamilton from Marshall. At tight end, we've got senior Eli Finley from Louisiana Tech. At left tackle, we've got freshman Frankie Tinilau from James Madison. At left guard, we've got senior Tyler Brown from James Madison. At center, we've got junior Mason Myers from Arkansas State. At right guard, we've got senior Will Saxton from Arkansas State. Right tackle, we've got senior DJ Fox from James Madison. Defensive end, we've got junior Anthony Bynum from Georgia Southern. The other defensive end spot goes to junior Amar Thomas from James Madison. At defensive tackle, we've got junior Kevin Roberts from James Madison. The other defensive tackle would be sophomore Chris Forbes from Old Dominion. At Sam linebacker, we've got sophomore Jackson Forrest from Old Dominion. Mike linebacker, we've got senior Trey Brown from Coastal Carolina. At will linebacker, we've got junior Gannon Weathersby from James Madison. At cornerback, we got freshman DJ Kelly from James Madison. Other cornerback spot is senior Jakari Henderson from Appalachian State. At free safety, we got senior Dateon Smith from Marshall. At strong safety, we got junior Five Hamilton from Arkansas State. At kicker, we've got senior Morgan Suarez from James Madison. And at punter, we've got senior Alex Smith from Georgia Southern. And that is it. We made it through all the preseason first and second team All-Americans and first and second team All-Conference players. That takes about an hour. Everything else, I think we are kind of good to go now. That's kind of our preseason. I guess we can look at, this will just be a bunch of zeros, I assume. Yeah. We could look at nationally, but that's all zero. We could look at career stats for different teams, but I think we're going to call it good. Does this show anything? Doesn't show anything yet. You got to win them on your own, which makes sense. All right, well, let's advance to next week. So I've already done my recruiting, and then we can kind of take a look at the week 0 games. I think we'll be able to get every single week 0 game in, just doing conference games of the week and things like that. And then on week 1, we'll start to maybe simulate some games. I'm really tempted to try to do every game again, but that just takes so long. So there's our AD expectations for Nebraska. There's our school update. No big updates. Obviously, nothing really happened. Nebraska has a bye week. But if we look at the top stories, Conference USA Clash, August 29th, 3:30 p.m., 84 degrees. Looks like it'll be raining, 70% chance of rain. Panthers faithful ready as Florida International kicks off Conference USA play against the Owls. We got Kennesaw State at Florida International, so a conference game right away in week 0. We've also got an ACC conference clash on August 29th, 7:30 p.m., 87 degrees, no chance of rain. You can't simulate what conference week feels like, Virginia head coach Tony Elliott said. The Cavaliers open ACC play at home versus the Wolfpack as NC State goes on the road to take on the Virginia Cavaliers. And this is another conference class in Conference USA. We really got all these conference games in week 0. August 29th, 7:30 p.m., 96 degrees, no chance of rain. There's no place to hide on the road in conference play. Missouri State head coach Casey Woods says the Bears open Conference USA play in Lynchburg as Missouri State goes on the road to take on Liberty. And another conference clash. I can't believe these are all week 0. August 29th, 8 o'clock p.m., 99 degrees, 5% chance of rain. I don't know why it's got that cloud with the rain showers there if it's only a 5% chance of rain. But the Hilltoppers open Conference USA play in Bowling Green. Time to settle in for the long haul. Delaware takes on Western Kentucky. I'm not sure how closely this matches the real-life schedule because I didn't think we had this many conference games in week 0. Let's take a quick look. Looking at nationally, yeah, there's way more games than there should be here, I'm pretty sure. So maybe we won't be able to get to every game. We'll see. We'll see what we do. But we got North Carolina taking on TCU. That's the game in Dublin. We got Kennesaw State at Florida International, which is a Conference USA matchup. We got New Mexico State at Florida State. We got Memphis at UNLV. We've got Hawaii at Stanford. We got San Jose State at number 15, USC. Got NC State at Virginia in an ACC matchup. Got Sacramento State at Eastern Michigan in a MAC matchup. Missouri State at Liberty in that Conference USA matchup. Jacksonville State at North Dakota State. and then Delaware at Western Kentucky in a Conference USA matchup. So I'm going to have to decide which games we're going to do, which games we're going to skip. Still tempting to do every game, but that just takes forever. We'll find out what we do. The national game of the week, I assume, has to be North Carolina at TCU or against TCU in Dublin. There's no other really. I mean, NC State and Virginia would probably be the only other option, but we'll see what we do. We're going to have a national game of the week, conference games of the week. We'll have rivalry games, and then I'm just going to pick other games that I just want to see. We'll end up with a ton of games, even if I don't do every single game. But that is kind of our wrap for the preseason. We'll see what happens as we play a lot of games. Maybe not all the games, but a lot of games. We'll start with next week's probably game of the week, as in Dublin, Ireland, the TCU Horned Frogs take on the North Carolina Tar Heels. That will definitely be our next game because that happens first. So we will see you for that in the next episode of our Dynasty, where we're playing a ton of games here.